Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Politics Relax podcast. This is a episode in conversation with Manjit Gill, with myself, Rajan, and Cameron. So please enjoy that, and also make sure you subscribe because we have a few mayoral candidates coming on, including Brian Rose. So stay tuned for that.
Perhaps you can tell me why you're interested in politics. We just don't have enough young people in politics, and if we can understand what inspires you, then perhaps I can inspire other people to join. Do you want to start, Felix?
Yeah, right. I just want to help other people. I see poverty. I hear all these statistics, and it's just the simplest thing. I want to help people. I see climate change and climate damage, and I want to try and do something about that. And I think politics is the best way to make tangible change for young people, especially because we're quite underrepresented. For example, 18 to 24-year-olds are the lowest turnout of every age group. So I just kind of want to help young issues and young people's issues to get to the forefront of politics and to try and get politicians to listen and try and implement change.
And have you decided on the party of your choice yet?
Yeah, Labour.
Okay. And how did you decide that? Was that something you did consciously? Was it something that your parents have followed? I mean, how do you come to that conclusion of which party to follow?
I think I've always been left wing. I see both parties and their values, and I always just move towards Labour and look at their manifesto and things like that. Just kind of every year though, I will always be evaluating what party I stand for, and if Labour do something that I wouldn't stand for, or I think is wrong, then of course I wouldn't support Labour. I think it's as simple as that, really.
And which politician inspires you the most?
That's a good question. Jacinda Ardern, maybe, who's the Prime Minister of New Zealand. I really like. I'd say her. She's just very level-headed. She comes across as very normal and very kind of warm and nice. And she's creating a lot of change. And New Zealand is doing great at the minute, especially with coronavirus as well.
But I'm going to make it a little bit more difficult. Well, how about politician in the UK?
Oh, okay. Andy Burnham, Labour Mayor of Manchester. He's held the government to account over coronavirus, and he stood up for Manchester and his people.
Okay, thank you. What about you, Cameron? Same questions.
Yeah, well, for me, the reasons, to be honest, the reasons why I look at politics and I think it's something I'm interested in and getting involved in from a young age is actually the same as what Felix said. The differences actually lie in how we implement those improvements to people's lives, definitely. That's where me and Felix might disagree on a number of occasions. For me, I identify with the values of the Conservative Party in a minute. I think that it's important that we promote a liberal and free society as we have done. And I think also having an open and free market, all that is important. My personal, when it comes to actual politicians, my kind of politician is someone who is competent, serious, and gets on with the job. For me, someone who's been there the whole time through my whole life, interested in politics, it's got to be Dominic Raab, who's my local MP. He's obviously the Foreign Secretary now, but I was well aware of him well before that. I was on that train back all the way from, he was first elected in 2010, but from a very long time ago. And to me, I think I say I identify with a lot of his values. And when it comes to the party as a whole, I, as Felix says, do similar things to him. I constantly examine options, policies, how different parties and different groups of people are looking at ways of helping people and to improve people's lives and to implement change in society that they think will achieve that. And for me, that's the party that I happen to identify with, and I'm happy that way.
Thank you. And What was it? What was the one thing that made you think about? I mean, do you want to go into politics in your career, or is it just something that you're interested in?
For me, I would say, yeah, I always try and keep an open mind, because I know that having real life experiences are really important before you go into politics. So yes, I'm very interested in politics, and it's definitely an area that I want to pursue in the future. But I think that it's important to get a well-rounded experience of how society and different sectors work to prepare you for that well. And for me, obviously, still in education, and I've still got 2 years of A levels to go, I'll be able to hopefully experience that. And it will help me to understand, say, what I might be interested in. For example, before going into politics or at the same time as politics. For example, a great passion of mine at the moment and for some time has been music. And I know that the music industry is an impossible place to get into. It's such a difficult industry to achieve success in. But nonetheless, I feel it's important to keep an open mind and to be understanding of different mindsets before or at the same time as going into politics. And that's what I think I want to be doing over the next few years, rather than rushing necessarily straight into something.
Cameron, I have to ask, do you think Boris Johnson is
Yeah, and balancing your passion.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Cameron,
Sorry,
do you think Boris Johnson is competent and serious?
I think that from my point of view, if I look at the work that his government have done since they were elected into office, to me, I do totally identify with many of the things that the government have implemented. And I'm not going to sit here and say that the government have got everything right. You know that I'm not going to do that, because we have these conversations all the time. But from my point of view, I think that, yes, competence and seriousness in a politician is important. And I'm not going to say that Boris Johnson is always serious, but I think that's what's quite refreshing about him as well. It's nice to have a little bit of that from time to time.
Personality is important. You kind of, I mean, personality could be a little bit like Marmite. You either love it or you hate it, right? And he definitely has something that brings his character to the fore. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about, Cameron. You either love him for his personality or you enjoy it, but want to hear what he really has to say. And I agree with Cameron. At the end of the day, it kind of boils down to, well, what have the government delivered?
I think
Exactly.
on the policy point, on the personality point, personality politics these days is what I think one of the most important things, because if you look how Donald Trump, even with his possibly you could say radical ideas, he managed to rile up a whole half of America, and that was largely down to his personality and how he attracted his own voters. The same thing goes for a lot of the Conservative government. Boris Johnson, he may not be as, how can you explain, formal or serious, but he brings that optimism about him, and that's what me, Felix, and Cameron have been discussing over the past week. Inside the Conservative Party right now, there's a lot of optimism and hope, and even if there might be some things that the opposition disagree with, the public they build and they latch on to this optimism, and it makes it makes the public feel safe. The ministers' briefings that happen every day, there's a sense of security and stability there, and I think that's what the government are getting right. It's playing into that notion of personality politics. And on the other side, I think that's what the Labour Party have got wrong. They've been very flat and not very responsive, not attacking as much, quite remaining neutral on issues they're not meant to remain neutral on. Just not acting when they should act, and sitting back when it is the time to attack. That's what the Labour Party have got wrong, and it's what the Conservative Party have managed to overturn and make it their advantage. And That's my take.
That's why they're so far ahead in the polls. If you look at all the polls across the country, nationwide, look at Hartlepool this week. The Tories are set to win there based off a Survation poll. We're winning over the north. We're winning over the country. It's I mean, we're in a winning situation at the moment. I think it's good because finally we can inject some optimism and hope into the country, despite going through the worst 12 months of pretty much everyone's lives. I think it's really positive. And what we're seeing is a step forward as a country, moving into a new era of positivity rather than negativity. I hope that everyone gets on that train, including Felix, actually. I'm sure that he might reject that notion, but...
Isn't the right time to be positive after partly down to the government's actions, there have been 100,000 coronavirus deaths? That's the question, I think. I mean, obviously now we've got the vaccine rollout.
Well, why don't you ask that to the majority of the population who think that actually now is the time for a bit of optimism?
Also, you could look at Felix, if somebody else was in charge, would it have really been any different, really?
Yes.
You know, ultimately, you think it would?
He thinks it would. Yeah, we've had this conversation. We could go on for hours and debate this, honestly. We could.
No.
Okay, so
we have.
I do want to push back to the same question for you, Rajan.
Yeah.
Why politics? Who inspires you? What do you want to do with it?
Well, I think, firstly, I agree with all the reasons that Felix and Cameron listed before on why you get into politics. But a primary addition to that is that politics is largely something that is social. It's not something that you sit back on and work in the captivity of your own room or desk. Politics is something where you have to get out. You have to get out there and meet people, and that's something that I love to do. I just having the ability to exude confidence on the main stage and interact with your constituents, interact with your people and your fellow countrymen, and not just talk about your constituency, but debate issues. Sometimes you'll be wrong. Me and Felix have had multiple debates where I've been wrong many a time, and he's been wrong many a time as well. And it's about accepting those issues and learning as you go, because you learn a lot when you talk to people. And politics is a social, it's a social subject. It's a social industry. You have to be social. If you don't be social, then you're not a politician. And that's. I find that talking to people is something I love to do, and that's why I'd love to get into the industry.
I love how Rajan says everyone, like, you have to get out there while everybody sits here on their desks talking about politics.
We're talking about politics right now. And,
it's even in social media, right, or Zoom, we're still talking, we're still communicating, aren't we? So we have to work in the constraints of society, I suppose.
Yeah.
And what we can do, and this is the only thing we can do right now, and hopefully with a bit of optimism, it will change, and we'll get back to normal life. Follow Boris Johnson's roadmap to recovery, and then we'll be out. On the point of political leanings, so far I think I'd consider myself as a conservative. I align with many of the policies on economic policy, on pragmatism, and not completely pragmatism. Pragmatism is where pragmatism is more reactionary, but I think you gotta take some elements from that as you go. And for me, when making my decision on where I align in politics, I feel like the left wing right now aren't competent enough, and they don't exude security, and they don't exude a lot of confidence. Like, can you see Keir Starmer as a prime minister leading the country?
Yes.
Maybe you'd be able to see him, but could you see his cabinet doing a competent job? I don't think, for me, they don't exude security, and
as opposed to this cabinet who exude confidence and exude
pragmatism.
Of course.
They do.
Clearly, the country
Rishi
think that they do
Sunak.
exude confidence.
Rishi Sunak is a man of the people. He's the most loved man in cabinet.
He's the richest member of parliament, and he's married to the richest woman in India, if I'm not incorrect.
And do you think that Felix, if he's the richest man in the country, then he would probably really know how to handle our finances? He probably has that experience, doesn't he?
He married into her. He didn't.
But I think
himself. He married into her.
But I think he brought a certain amount of wealth himself as well. And sometimes you kind of attract the person that you are. So for his relationship to be really working well, he's probably attracted that woman and that wealth into his life for his own reasons. That's what I think. At the moment,
I would also add.
Go ahead, sorry, Cameron.
Well, the one thing I'd add is that he's not just wealthy economically, but in my view, he's got a wealthy personality. I think that he, as Rajan says, he exudes confidence, competence, and above all, I think he has an understanding, despite perhaps the advantaged economic position that he's found himself in now. To me, it seems as though he's a man who gets it. He goes about, he walks around, he knows how he can help people. And if you see in the last 12 months, that's exactly what he's put into place.
Yeah, and it's not just that, it's also...
apart from the 3 million people who were left out of all of his schemes, the forgotten LTD, I think they're called. Apart from that, yeah, he's...
There's always going to be holes, but over 10 million people,
the big 3 million.
Their employment has been saved by Rishi Sunak's furlough scheme, and I think we've got to remember that.
The other thing he's got wealth.
Look at the positives. Look at the positives, not the negatives.
What about
you're not very good at that?
Who are unemployed and don't have any support from the government? I don't think they're going to be feeling particularly positive.
What would you do for them, Felix?
What I do for them, I would look into them. I would listen to their concerns, and I don't have it to hand. But I would look into it, and I would try to help as many of them as possible.
But you didn't actually say.
Do you not think the government are doing that already, though?
I don't think they are, no, because there are still 3 million people that are missing out from employment, from benefits from Rishi Sunak.
But I think that's the thing. Sometimes we have to come with the idea to the table, because yeah, of course we feel for them, but do we have a solution? Do we know how to fix that? And I think it was quite astounding. Like when you look at, for example, maybe the first couple weren't that great when we hadn't worked out which industries were allowed to operate and which ones weren't, right? So I remember the first few items where when we had our first lockdown, there was a lot of excluded communities. And then now when you look at the documentation, it's every single sector in there, has every single job title in there. So we all, if we need to find that information, can find it. And it does take time, doesn't it? We don't have all that information to hand right at the beginning, but we do now. So I'm sure that those communities have been looked at and are being planned for. And our furlough system is extended to September. That's nearly 2 years. That will be 2 years nearly.
I'm just trying to. You've got to bear in mind the fiscal consequences of all these schemes as well. Sometimes that might go a bit out the window, Felix.
Here we go. No. Here we go. I've got what I could do. I'd actually.
Hang on, you've got an added advantage now, Felix, because you're getting the facts to hand, and then you're going to throw the question out there, and you want us to reply to it factually.
Here we go. No, I've got the facts, and I'll tell you what I do now. Here we go. So it's newly self-employed people and less than 50% of self-employed people. So all these self-employed people, I'd actually trust them to say, look, we are self-employed. Can we get these benefits? Because what was happening is the government, you'd have to have been paying taxes as somebody that was self-employed for over a year to get these benefits, when instead they should have trusted people to say, I'm self-employed.
What, and then take however much money they want?
No, of course not. However much money they want, but they'd be entitled to self-employment benefits. Of course, they'd have to provide some evidence. I don't know what that evidence would look like. We'll have to look into that further. But if they could provide a bit of evidence that they were self-employed, instead of going just off taxes for over a year, if they paid taxes within the last, 2 or 3 months that are self-employed ones, then we can give them the self-employed benefits.
I think that's where the problem lay, though, Felix, was that most of them weren't able to supply that evidence, and that's kind of where the pitfall.
No, but the only way you could actually the only way you're entitled to these self-employed benefits was if you've been paying tax to somebody that was self-employed for over a year. So anybody who was newly self-employed wouldn't get any access to these benefits, and it's young people especially that have been affected by that. People who are just going into the jobs market, and I think the government could have done a better job to help them.
Yeah, I agree, we could always do a better job in hindsight, always.
The problem is that when you're setting up these schemes, and I feel like it must be difficult for the team at the Treasury, because you're not talking about masses of people, right, in one building for a start. I know that's a basic way of looking at it, but then you've got to try and safeguard the jobs of tens of millions of people. And how are you going to do that in the most effective way in such a short amount of time? The pandemic hit us out of the blue for a start. The Treasury had to set up schemes that were going to help as many people as possible as quickly as possible. And I think if you're going to say 3 million people have been left out, I think if you look at the broad scheme of things, 3 out of 67 million, it's what I would call a small hole in the net. And yes, there's always more that we can do. There is always more that we can do. But they were working as quickly as they could. They're in a very difficult position. They've managed to safeguard tens of millions of jobs. I think that they deserve a bit of credit for that, not just criticism.
No, of course. I mean, the Treasury had a very hard job, and they haven't done. I'm not saying they've done a terrible job. Out of all the government departments, they've probably done one of the best. But for a start, you could have found. I mean, I don't know if you're talking about the money side of things, but on the money side of things, it was not a problem because they obviously had enough money to spend 30 billion on PPE contracts of friends or donors of the Conservative Party or people with no prior experience in PPE. So there's your money, and then look, in the first few months of the pandemic, of course, it was extremely hard, and they had to kind of get these things together quickly, and I commend them for the job that they did. But once it gets to 5 or 6 months, right, and these people every single time, and people raised it in Parliament, they wrote to them, they've signed petitions, everything. This message has got to get to Rishi Sunak somehow, right? And then when it comes to the budget just a few months ago, he could have announced something for them to help them out a little bit, or to get them back on their feet after losing all of that, not getting any of those benefits that Rishi Sunak was giving out to self-employed people. Surely they deserved a bit of that when it came to the budget.
We have these, I think it's monthly, and I think you've been on one, haven't you, Rajan, where we can put forward ideas of to help with policy change. Do you remember we were on one 2 months ago?
Number 10, where you send policy advice directly to the Prime Minister's office.
Yeah, so we can, perhaps if you want to, Felix, you can think about how you would do it, and then we can share that on your behalf.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Felix gets his wishes.
Yes.
We sort lives out for the 3 million.
Exactly. No,
Well done, Felix.
It sounds really.
You've got all the answers, don't you?
I don't have all the answers. No, I'm not professing I have all the answers. But you make it sound all right when it's 63 out of 67. But when you put the million on the end, 3 million people, that is a lot of people.
I think, actually, if we think about this part of the conversation, the most terrifying thing is, for me, standing in this election, is there's 1 or 2 people that I can't help, or I didn't help fast enough, or they really suffered as a consequence. They fall through the net. They're the ones that are going to shout the loudest, and I'm going to be remembered for what I do for them, or what I didn't do for them, more than I'm going to be remembered for the people that I do help. And that's the challenging thing about putting yourself in forward for public roles. You are going to get slaughtered for the things that you don't find a solution for, right? So how do we balance that? Because being in the public space is something that I choose to be, but actually my kids might hate it. They might go through hell because they have to go through that process with me. So sometimes we have to kind of consider that human element of people trying to do their best, and if you do your best at work but you make a mistake, nobody really ever finds out. Where when you're in the public space, your every single thing you do is scrutinized. Do we talk about that enough?
I think that's where we were talking about earlier, and focusing on optimism now. Focusing on, we've got a brilliant vaccine rollout, one of the best in the world, the best that the UK's ever seen, and using that to progress. The IMF, International Monetary Fund, they projected that by 2022, the UK will have the biggest economic growth rate out of the G7, and I think that's positive. That's positive progressions and indicating that our economy can get back to where it is before. The government, they won't get everything right. No one can get everything right. It's very rare for that to happen, and I think right now we can focus on the brilliant things that the government has done. Instead of we should focus. It's not saying that we should ignore the things that the government has ignored. But it's saying there's always room to improve, and that's where we focus on next. But also bear in mind, to focus on bad things, to focus on the negatives, brings a lot of pessimism into the minds, and especially when they're having a mental health crisis. It's not the best. It's not the best thing. So now's the time for optimism and safe and sustainable progression, and that's what we're seeing.
This is what Labour have got completely wrong though. Now, when I'm talking on the call centre phones to people from the north, from Hartlepool, from Tees Valley, they're saying that they're actually proud of what they've achieved as people, what society has achieved in terms of advancing into the modern age, and they feel as though actually what Labour tries to do is just drag them down and ignore those achievements. And I think that might be slightly what Felix is veering towards when he's talking about the Treasury's work, and the government's work in general. Because if you talk about the PPE contracts, for example, and you talk about who they've been awarded to, but when you look at it, we haven't had an actual problem with PPE for many, many months, since the very start of the pandemic, when obviously it came out of the blue and no one could see it coming. But this is just the problem that I think Labour and yourself are running into constantly. And what people want is actually what the Conservatives are actually giving them, which is this hope, this, for most people, security, that we're actually going to be able to advance. We've made progress in areas like racial injustice, in, say, gender equality, for example. And now's the time to advance our position as a country in the world and to recognise the achievements that we've made over the course of many decades. The actual personal sacrifices people have made to contribute towards that. I think that many people up and down the country feel that Labour are completely ignoring those. And to me, I think that's why perhaps they're running into some traps in the polls.
But what is, one, I'm very proud of this country and what throughout the pandemic. I think it's been like incredible, and for some people this has been such a really hard time, and the fact that we've got through that is like really impressive. And on a like countrywide level, I'm not saying that like that's not happened. Of course that happened. But when we're examining government policy throughout these last 12 months, we have to take the good and the bad, right? We have to take both sides of that. I think that the Treasury done a great job actually throughout this pandemic. I don't think it's done a terrible job at all. But for example, in the health side of it, we could have seen this coming because we had Operation Cygnus just a few years ago, when Jeremy Hunt was the health secretary, when there was they like simulated a pandemic in the NHS, and the finding of that was that the NHS would be overrun. Thank God it hasn't been overrun, and thank God for our NHS staff, who this Conservative Party will not give or who this government will not actually give a pay rise to. And they haven't given a real term pay rise to NHS staff for over 10 years. So that's why I'm being optimistic. I'm thinking, and our amazing NHS staff deserve a pay rise. And that is, I think, is a very optimistic thing to say. And the other thing is, we cut the PPE supply, the pandemic supply of PPE. We had a pandemic supply of PPE, but under a Conservative government, that was cut.
Do you know, Felix, if we go back to right at the beginning, when you asked me why would I go into politics, one of the key reasons is that I would always focus on the solution, right? So we could talk about the problem, we could talk about how something doesn't work till our ears bleed. And also, as individuals, if we focus on the things that we do really well, but we don't let somebody bring us down for the stuff that maybe we got wrong or we didn't do as well, it allows us to then be productive moving forward, right? So as a politician, I want to be productive. I want to create change. I'm going to look at all the things that I can do and keep doing them. And of course, look at the things that I didn't do so well, but find a different way of bringing those solutions. And we have to do that as individual people as well. So if we just complain and moan, then we're not really adding anything. So let's just keep coming up with solutions. Let's find out what they did do wrong, but let's find a solution. Let's not just poke. If someone's throwing rubbish on the street and you're getting annoyed by it, how do we stop them doing that? What's the solution? Like, let's just come up with answers. And I think that's kind of the best advice that I would give any young person is focus on the solution. Think about the impact that you're making. Think about the things that aren't working well, but make sure you know how to make them well. And if you spend more of your time on thinking how to make it well, then you're adding what you can do as an individual to the planet. And I think that's all we can do, really. Can't do any more than that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And
value of
oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. No, I completely agree with what you're saying. I think obviously we have to look forward to solutions. I mean, just last week, me and Cameron did like 2 manifestos where I was looking for solutions, right? But then again, the worry is we do not hold this government to account, and we should hold every single government to account and every like politician to account. So you have to get that balance right. And I think like we all agree that there has to be this sense of optimism and this solutions, but we also have to hold this government to account. And we also have to point out what it's done wrong and why that has happened, because that's just as important as finding solutions. And I think there are many solutions going forward, and we have a great new slate, and we have a chance to like rebuild society as we would like to see it. And I think this government have a great opportunity in that. And there is a lot to do. There is a lot of problems in our society still. 4 million children are in poverty, and our NHS staff haven't had a pay rise for over 10 years, and we should look to solve those problems. And I am under this government, I'd say I'm not that optimistic, because I don't believe that they have the skills or the competence to lead our country into the new kind of world post-COVID. So I would probably say I'd be more optimistic if, I don't know, there was a more moderate or a more kind of sensible, competent government in charge, and then I'd be a lot more optimistic. But currently, I do not feel that sense of optimism that you've been all alluding to.
So I should probably quit then, shouldn't I? and not go stand for my local community because you have no hope in my belief system.
Not you specifically, but for example, Boris Johnson, for example, Priti Patel, for example, Matt Hancock. That's more who I'm talking about. Not the like. You have lived in your area, you know the real problems. So it's not at a local level. At a local level, I think that there are local councillors, councils have a lot of responsibility, but not that much power. And I think that local government needs a bit more power and maybe a bit more funding as well to help their local people. Because at the end of the day, you know what's best for your local community. I wouldn't know what's best for like Weybridge and Riverside, but I maybe would know what's best for my community.
If there was another candidate, say, for example, someone who represented Lib Dems, they would say what they say and I would say what I say. How do you know who's going to make the difference or change for you? Does it matter which party they're for, or is it who they represent as individuals?
It's
Probably their personality.
On a local level, it's who they represent as individuals. On a like nationwide level, it's both who the leaders are as individual and your local MP. So you have to balance that out, and it's a hard balancing act, really.
Exactly.
Watching today's video, remember Brian Rose will be coming on the podcast, so subscribe and turn notifications on. And also go and check out. I was on a podcast a few days ago talking about this podcast and how it was started. So go and watch that in the description now. Thank you.